Welcome back to Woman, Conversations in Black and White. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Linda. We're recording our conversations on sensitive topics across racial lines to enlighten each other and our listeners, and to encourage you to have the same type of conversations. Today's topic is
critical race theory, also known as CRT, which is in the news. Linda, I've seen now just about every single evening. Many state legislators are talking about it, school boards, parents at school board meetings. So Linda and I felt it was more than appropriate to actually talk about what critical race theory is, and more so what it isn't.
Excellent. You can educate me more, although I've done some research, but I think you probably know more about it. So if you want to start, I'm happy with that.
All right. So for what I have learned, because I was trying to figure out, just like most people, what is this hullabaloo that people are constantly crying about? And so what critical race theory actually is, it is an academic theory that began its origins in like the 60s and 70s, Linda. And what it came from is after many of the civil rights legislation had been passed, the presumption would be that education inequities, wealth gaps, housing disparities, health inequities, things of those natures would begin to level out and become more even with the dominant culture, with the passing of new legislation that was supposed to make life more equitable and access to things of those natures more fair. And they were finding that it was not. And so many scholars, and a good majority of them were legal as well, due to them noticing that not much was changing in regard to discriminatory practices within the criminal justice system as well. And so they were trying to figure out, why are we not seeing more forward momentum and progress and accumulation of things, specifically within the Black community, with all of this legislation that has been passed? And so they began to delve into this and recognize that race, which Linda and I talked about in our last episode, a created construct, was still being used against Black people in spite of legislation being passed in order for that to no longer be an issue. So they were saying, when you look at people's whole lives and societies and communities, we have to look at it through the lens of race and how that impacts Black people from being able to attain, acquire, or move forward in significant areas in their lives. That is literally all critical race theory is. An academic concept, an academic construct in which to look at how wealth and education and health and housing and how those things are distributed through society and or not, based on the construct of race. That is what critical race theory is.
What I have learned from my research is that critical race theory is an academic theory, as she said, that is taught in some law schools, and that's about it. It's virtually never taught in K through 12 public schools. It's just not done. So in that sense, one could speculate that the people that are opposed to it and feel so strongly about it that they want their state to say, you can't teach critical race theory in public schools. It's like, well, it wasn't happening anyway. So we can speculate that what they're saying is, we don't want students in the public school to learn the truth about the history of race and racism and all that. We don't want them to learn that. So we're tacking it onto this name and so forth. So where it'll go legally in the future is, up in the air. But that's what critical race theory is and what it's not. It's not about teaching history or the whole part of it. It has nothing to do with that.
And it's not even about, I would even say it has nothing to do with K through 12. Linda, you have a college degree. I have a college degree and some graduate degrees. I had never heard of critical race theory
Me neither.
I had literally never heard of critical race theories, and we have both have bachelors. I have a master's. I'm working on an education specialist. Never heard of it. So it's not even anything that you would run into in K through 12 to start with, let alone you could get well up into bachelor's and advanced degrees and never hear of it. So this
Right.
is not about critical race theory at all. What it is about is the denial of learning the whole history and teaching the whole history in the United States. It has nothing to do with the critical race theory, because unless you're in law school, odds are people only in law school had knew about critical race theory before, and it may not be taught in all those law schools, to tell you the truth.
Right. So how that was dug out and latched onto as some sort of code word, we don't really know. There's probably a story there. But the fact of it is that it is nothing that was taught in public elementary schools or secondary schools. It is rarely taught in four-year colleges and may occasionally be taught in law schools. So in effect, labeling it that is going to do nothing that the proponents of prohibiting it want. But more to the point is that they're probably trying to get, well, you can't teach the truth about race and how it works in this country. You can't teach that. That's probably what they're trying to say. I doubt that this will accomplish that, but I don't know.
I think it is more deep rooted in that. I think it is a way to avoid white people having to be uncomfortable learning the history from more than their perspective. I think that is honestly what it is about.
I'm sure you're right.
Not telling the truth of the nation as it is from all different perspectives. Mm-hmm. I honestly believe that is what it is about. And I believe the proponents of it, which are typically far right, who do an exceptional job of fear mongering, have done an exceptional job of fear mongering around critical race theory in order to avoid having truthful, honest, and transparent conversations about not only the things that we've done as a nation, but where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow. Not everyone wants this to live up to the precepts of the Constitution. There are many people who still want to keep it as segregated and as alienated and access to power as limited as they possibly can. I honestly believe that that is what this is about.
Yep, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right. Mm-hmm. And I guess we could say in one way that them making such a fuss about CRT until we all know that it's something is actually causing a lot of people to look at it. It's sort of like, don't look at the pink elephant. Don't think about a pink elephant up there on the Eiffel Tower. Don't think about that. And it's like, well, everybody says,
like, huh?
What's that?
What? And
so the tendency then on humans is to start looking and to start thinking about that. So we could say there's some good that could come out of this. And you and I would not be talking about it if there was not such a push. Right. So we were. It wasn't like on our radar 6 months ago.
No. And you and I are educated people and continue to learn things outside of formal education. Neither one. I had never heard of critical race theory.
Right.
Ever.
Right. Exactly. So
ever. And what scares me and what's just most disheartening, and I know you would agree, being a former educator, is now we are literally handcuffing educators even more when it comes to teaching the actual truth in history class, in social studies, in economics, and science. We are hindering the actual truth being taught by educators.
Right. Well, I would say that probably what's the reality is some daring teachers will not teach critical race theory, but they will teach a more wholehearted version of history, which is good. Some teachers will be so nervous that they will steer clear of it, which of course was part of the idea of this. Mm-hmm. And somebody somewhere will take it to the courts and it will get decided there. Is it legal to say this? So there's a journey. This is just the beginning of that. But there's a big push on the part of the white supremacy system, which usually translates to the hard right, to keep the truth about our history suppressed. That is the big push. And it's going on in other countries to some extent too. I have been reading lately, in one of the residential schools in Canada, and I know it happened in Australia and it happened in Canada and probably happened a little bit in the US, but maybe not as much for some reason. They took a lot of children of indigenous families, the Native American families in the Canadian area, took them away from their families and put them in schools that were run by the Catholics. And there was a variety of sexual and physical abuse, as well as cultural abuse, where they tried to erase the culture. And that was done in America, in the US also to some extent, but specifically there. And recently there was discovered the graves or the bodies of 215 children that were buried on the grounds of one of these residential schools. So there's a major national day of mourning going on in Canada about this. But at the same time, there's this question, well, will this really change anything? Usually it's a little bit of ceremony followed by, well, let's forget about that ever happened. Canada is a good country. Canada is good people. And just like the United States, we want to believe that we are good people and we don't have skeletons in our closet like this, but the skeletons are there and they are rattling around more and more. And whether it's indigenous peoples or Black Africans that were enslaved or the treatment of them, it's just, there's a lot of skeletons and they are falling out of the closet right now.
Yes. Or people are digging them up. Yes. It's one or the other.
All of the above.
So again, we always want to encourage our viewers and people in general to be conscious of where you consume information and to not be afraid to go out and research and find out what things are for yourself. Because teaching about systematic discrimination or injustices is not critical race theory. Talking about white supremacy and Jim Crow laws and Reconstruction, that is not critical race theory.
Right.
So we need to recognize that the words that are being used is not actually what we're even talking about. They are using that as a scapegoat in order for whole history to not be taught, acknowledged, and discussed. So we've got to be better consumers of information for ourselves individually and not take what people are hollering out in the media as truth. We have got to be consumers of information for ourselves.
Do your research, find the authors, find the authors being interviewed. If you don't want to read a book quite yet, look for some of these authors on the various mainstream networks and look for them being interviewed. And then if it speaks to you, then you can track down books by many of these authors. They're historians and speakers and teachers.
YouTube clips that you can look up and find out true information. And I would only look at ones from PhDs who have actually studied it, not somebody who just got the most views, but an actual educator to find out what things really are.
Right. All right.
Well, that was a good one, Linda. We had to talk about it because you hear about it every single day now.
Right.
And what people are and what people are calling it or dubbing it to be is not actually what it is. It's not actually what it is. Yes.
So well said.
So thank you for
close.
So thank you for taking the time to watch our videos. Please like, comment, and subscribe and share this information. Share this information because I'm sure you have friends or families in your circles that are like, critical race theory is this, this, and that. No, it's not. No, it's not. So please feel free to share, start talking, keep talking, and we'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.